recap where there's the go live button and I'm clicking go live. So this should, for realsies, be the go live of this show, the weekly crypto recap. If you are joining us, you have just tuned in to the weekly crypto recap where we go over all of the latest crypto news from the week, and it's always pretty exciting because crypto is a place that is filled with craziness and extortion and hacks and negligence lawsuits and lawsuits about identity and occasionally some really interesting, cool products that we're going to tell you about. So welcome to the show, guys. It's so lovely to have you all here. Welcome to the show, Chris Karabat, aka Zaphoid of Smart Cash. It is wonderful to have you here as always.
Hey, Naomi, it's always my pleasure to be here. It's been a fun week. Looks like we have some interesting things to talk about.
We absolutely do have lots of interesting things to talk about. And I just want to make sure that your face is popping up on the screen. Sometimes it just films me. So if it's a mixture of both of us, that would be ideal. But so let's go over some of the topics that we're going to be talking about this week on this show. First of all, we've got a little bit of Coinbase news. So if you rewind your thoughts back to, I think, 2017, when Bitcoin Cash, we had a fork, then we had Coinbase saying we're not going to support Bitcoin Cash, and then they did decide to support Bitcoin Cash, and then they launched it, and there were all these mishaps that happened that night. Then there was a fake launch, and they had to shut everything down. Well, there is a lawsuit surrounding this, so we're going to be talking about the details of that. We're also going to be talking about a threat that Coinbase warded off in the last couple of days. They just announced it. I'm not sure when it actually took place, but they just released details of this. Again, more phishing scams you guys need to be aware of. It's pretty crazy, some of the lengths people will go to try to earn your trust and scam you out of your money. Or put malware on your computer. Then we've also got the extortion threat that there was a hacker who claimed to be hacking the hackers who hacked Binance in May, and claiming to be this altruistic white hat hacker, wanted to extort Binance out of 300 Bitcoin. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about negative interest rates, some craziness happening around the world, especially to do with a Danish bank at the moment. We have a new global control system. Sorry, I mean a new global cryptocurrency system created by governments to protect us from money laundering. So we'll chat a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin price at the moment, Litecoin halvening, and a really cool bill that is being reintroduced, I should say, in North Carolina. So let's go straight into it. Chris, well, first of all, I just want to welcome all the people here. Hi, guys. It's all my favorite people. I love you guys. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, wherever you are in the world. It's always so lovely to see you. So someone's complaining of echo. You really scared me. We know we've had issues on the show before. Turns out Uber's has just had multiple tabs open. I'm so glad that was your issue and not mine. I would have cried. I may have cried. Let's start off with Coinbase, guys. So the negligence suit. I sort of gave you a brief overview of some of the things that happened back in 2017. Chris, do you want to just kind of expand on that and explain the details of what this lawsuit is about?
Well, the lawsuit's about negligence on Coinbase's behalf during the initial launch of Bitcoin Cash on Coinbase back in 2017, during the craziness that was, of course, December 2017. I'm sure most of us were here during that time, and most of us remember how hyped everything was and how excited everybody was to get Bitcoin Cash onto Coinbase. They did a bit of a surprise-ish launch when they talked about it, but everybody was pretty sure it was coming because everybody could watch the price increase slowly up to that point. Everybody was talking about insider trading, yada, yada, yada. But I'm relatively certain all the insider trading lawsuits have just been thrown out because really hard to prove anything like that. But basically, what happened during the initial Bitcoin Cash launch at Coinbase when they finally turned on BTC, BCH trading is the order books were not sufficient to hold up to the task. And basically, people were buying Bitcoin Cash with way high prices, and people made, I believe they ended up honoring all those orders. So people ended up selling Bitcoin Cash for incredibly high amounts, and people bought Bitcoin Cash for incredibly high amounts. So it was a bit crazy when it first launched. And that lasted, I want to say, like 3 minutes before they turned off trading again and then left it off for a couple days
What an epic false start. Like, here you go, everyone. Here's the trading. It's really, and they're off. And just like silence for a few days. So yeah, that is controversial. So what do you think about the claims where this guy says that this was negligent behavior, that they had a responsibility to provide better service, that he was hurt in the process? The case was brought by Jeffrey Burke, who's a former Coinbase user, and he's also accused the exchange of insider trading. What do you think about all of this?
I think the insider trading thing is hard to prove. I don't necessarily care about insider trading as much as
I really don't. I don't understand why it's an issue. It's like the definition of insider trading is making smart decisions with your money according to information that you have. And if you have information, like, you're not allowed to act on it, even if it's like financially to your detriment. Like, I don't know. It's just very convoluted. I can see why people have an issue with it because you don't want certain people having access to systems that, you know, hurt other people. But I mean, honestly, I just think that they consider all kinds of things insider trading, which are just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's so hard to prove. Like, you might just doing a trade, you don't actually have information, then afterwards you learn information that made your previous trade, and it gets kind of crazy. And I feel sorry for people who have to deal with that. I'm glad that I don't, because it's stupid. But the other thing about, you know, are they culpable for this lawsuit? I mean, they were trying to release a new product and they didn't do it very well. The issue is it was dealing with people's money, but at the same time, this was the first launch of this kind that Coinbase did, and they've handled it better since then with launches of their other products. But still, I mean, everybody was stupidly excited. Nobody was prepared for the level of interest that was happening anywhere in December of 2017, right before Christmas. And it's kind of, I don't know. I don't think that Coinbase should necessarily be culpable for this. I don't think they were intentionally screwing with people. And I don't think that they were doing a bad faith effort here either. I think that they were just doing the best they could, and nobody could have really expected the amount of interest and traffic that was coming to any of the major exchanges this time, much less Coinbase, the number one.
Yeah, it's and it's always tough. Like, I think people are hard on companies in the crypto space because this is their money. You know, they want to protect themselves, and they're sort of trusting these companies. And I mean, I agree with that, and you want to hold it to the highest standard possible. But also, this is such a new space. You know, these are people who are testing these systems out. They're constantly discovering new bugs and fixes and all kinds of things, and new like attack vectors. So it's this constant battle. And I tend to give companies a bit of leeway, and that means that I don't necessarily put a lot of trust in many companies out there. I think that's going to get better and better. And I think even once you do have an established industry, you always need to proceed with caution. You know, even in our current like other industries that the government apparently regulates and they've been around for forever, you know, treat everything with caution and just make sure you're protecting yourselves and doing everything possible to make sure that your assets are safe and your security safe, your data is safe, etc. So like, I understand why they're angry, but I mean, from what you're saying, it seems like it was sort of unforeseen circumstances.
I mean, I could certainly be less forgiving and claiming that they knew exactly what's going to happen and they took the opportunity to make a huge profit off of others, and which is entirely possible. I just don't really think there's all that much evidence for that, and I don't think it's necessarily productive for anybody to make those claims. And if indeed they did lose this, I think it's kind of not a great sign for things to come, because, you know, if you're bad at your job, you get a lawsuit. I mean, that's not, I don't think that's appropriate in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of different Coinbase news. So they actually yesterday just put out information about a 0-day attack. It was to do with like Firefox, basically hackers trying to get into Coinbase, and they detailed this elaborate method that the hackers went to try to hack the exchange. And I want to tell people about it because I think it's really important to recognize that when when hackers are trying to get into your stuff, they're probably not going to have a neon sign that says, I am a hacker, please give me your things. I mean, there are certain situations like when you get those emails from the Nigerian princes who are offering you all this money. I haven't taken them up on that offer. Maybe I should reply sometime. But I mean, those things are big red flags, and they're actually deliberately trying to make themselves seem like scammers because it's a filtering process. They want to pick the lowest hanging fruit. But generally, people are going to earn your trust, that you may even meet you in person. They're going to be on lots of social media accounts where you are. There are really sophisticated scammers out there. So I wanted to detail a little bit about what happened with Coinbase, where apparently the hackers targeted certain employees at Coinbase. They gave individualized detail about each of the people that they were reaching out to, as if they'd looked into them. Each email was personalized. From this, I think like the final link that would have downloaded malware onto their system was only sent to 2.5% of the people initially targeted. It was just a handful of people that they ended up sending this link to. And Coinbase sort of details all of the levels of security they had to get through in order for this to have been installed. They actually averted all of this, so you don't have to worry about that. Their malware detection engines systems detected this and triggered it, and then they found out more information about the attacker, etc. But I think that it's just really important to be aware that sometimes, like, I think human nature, we look at things and we really want to trust things, and society really only works when you have a certain level of trust within your close community. So you're going to probably believe the best, unless you grew up in New York City, and then you're probably going to be a cynic and not believe the best in people, as I've learned. But generally, these people are going to try to assuage your concerns, but just be really careful out there because it's super sophisticated what's going on. So Chris, did you read up about this this attack? Do you have anything that you wanted to add about this? Chris, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry,
There we
the
go.
button was ignoring me.
Why was it? No, it's so rude. Why would it do that? It's probably because you have too much worthwhile information. It was like a hacker saying, like, no, don't let him speak. He will help people protect themselves.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that nobody cares. I was going to say, as a geek, I was really appreciated reading all about this, and was really quite impressed with the whole process that went down here. I mean, first, the attackers didn't just attack Coinbase. They actually compromised the University of Cambridge official's website and made something legit looking, a legit user at the site with legit email, a legit landing page there, and everything. So they compromised the University of Cambridge in order to compromise, look more legitimate for their other targets, which I thought was quite interesting. They used two separate zero-day attacks in Firefox, and basically from the time of the changes made to Firefox to the time that the first spear phishing emails started was 18 days. So they identified the vulnerability in Firefox and started figuring out who to attack and how to attack them in just over 2 weeks, which is pretty impressive, all things considered.
It is pretty impressive and terrifying.
And what they did is they actually took a big process here. Between the first spear phishing emails on May 30th, they didn't actually send out the exploit until June 17th, at least as far as Coinbase is admitting here. And that employee saw something weird happening when they finally did click on that link in Firefox on their Mac. And that's how Coinbase security noticed it. And Mozilla security team noticed that was informed the very next day. It took them like 3 days to fix the issue. So if you want to read more about it, just there's the Coinbase blog on Medium of responding to the Firefox 0 days in the wild. Read through it. It's a useful read. Talks a bit about the methodology they used, things you should be aware of to protect yourself against spear phishing attacks. And just to back up a second, we're all probably aware of what a phishing attack is, where you get an email that looks like it's from your credit card company or bank or whatever, and you click on it, but it actually takes you to another web page and steals your login credentials or whatever it's going to do. Where a spear phishing attack is actually where they are attacking you specifically. They know who you are, what you're doing, and it's a very targeted attack, hence spear, versus just a net of attack, hence regular phishing. So
Yeah.
I found it very interesting. And if you like reading about the CVEs, that's good. They talk about how nice their code looks. So they weren't, amateurs throwing this together. They actually had well formatted code with descriptive functions in it and everything. And it was quite interesting. But be aware that if you see weird stuff happening on your computer, like you click on a link and suddenly a terminal or a shell is launched on your computer, that's a bad sign, and you should probably quit everything right away.
Oh, God. And I really kind of like the analogy that the phishing metaphor really extends. Like you've got, dragnet capture, you've got spear capture, you've got bait on a tiny hook capture. Like they just kind of took that and ran with it, didn't they?
Yes, they did, and it works very well because you have the bait fishing. What do they call that? I'm just reading about it now. I'm gonna sound
Oh,
like
there is a bait fishing one.
well, yeah. Well, basically, what people do is they will leave USB keys around in public areas and wait for people to take those USB keys and plug it into their computers, and then that will install malware on their computer. So
Right.
oftentimes to try to attack a particular location, they'll go to restaurants and cafes and whatnot nearby that business or whatever and leave these USB drives just sitting there, forgotten, whatever. And then people will see them and go, oh, I should figure out what's on this so I can get it back to the person. They'll put it in their computer and bam, their network's now compromised. So that's a very common way to go about this. You can do all sorts of different things with those. But just be aware, don't be stupid. And for all of us with crypto, do crypto stuff on your crypto computer. Don't mix it up with the rest of what you do. And then even if you are phished on your primary computer with your email, it's that they still can't take your cryptocurrency.
That's a great point. And one thing I'll bring up, so I recently did an interview with a spy, I just like using that word. That's not what she calls herself. She calls herself a red team physical pen test, red team physical pen tester, where she's actually hired by companies to break into their buildings so she can find out security vulnerabilities, etc. And she talks a lot about educating people, whether it's your workforce or whether it's your apartment building. Like everyone needs to be aware of attack vectors and making sure that they're securing this whole system. And it's funny because someone responded to this video and they said, like, this is ridiculous. What kind of a world are we living in where everyone needs to be aware of their security? They should hire people to do this and take care of all that. And I think people like that miss the point that this is everyone's responsibility. And if you want to protect yourself, there's no one out there who's just going to save the day for you. There's no one out there who's just going to, come in and protect you. And like, this is your responsibility. You need to be making sure that you are covering all your bases, making sure you don't have any giant security holes out there. And it's just really important to cover that up. Like one of the examples she gave is that she went to this building, she tried to break into it, and usually it's super easy. She just pretends to be a pregnant lady. Everyone holds open the door for her. And her job is
taking advantage of sex.
I know. But the guys who are on her team, they use crutches. So people hold over the door, or she'll sometimes carry big boxes. So it preys on people's weaknesses and their empathy, which is really important to keep in mind. But she went to this one building and no one would hold open the door or let her in. And she's like, what is going on? And she found out that it's because at this company, they have like random quizzes, like a couple of times a year. They will have someone deliberately try to break in, and if they get caught, if anyone in the work place catches this person, then they get like this bonus and this cake, and there's like this big deal made out of it. So everyone's trying to catch these fake scammers getting in so that they can be the person who wins this prize. They created this culture around protecting the physical security of this building. And what that means is people can't break in and insert thumb drives, put malware on the computer, and that sort of thing is all too common. So just be aware of that, guys. And I wanted to give an example of what happened at Coinbase, because as you said, Chris, they explained it so eloquently, and it's just really good to know what sort of attack vectors are out there. Anything else you want to add?
If you want to learn a bit more about this, I've been kind of geeking out about this thing myself lately. I've made my wife listen to a few podcasts. She was like, at first, like, what are we listening to? And halfway through, she's like, all right, this is really interesting. I'm glad we're listening to this.
I like that.
a podcast I listen to called Darknet Diaries, and he's kind of done a few episodes talking with red team people. And my two favorite ones are episode 36, Jeremy from Marketing, and episode 40, No Parking, where they talk to a couple different red teams and how they're going about things and what exactly they're doing for both network pen testing and physical pen testing. So I think if you enjoy this sort of thing and want to listen to more about it and hear people talk about it, I strongly suggest Darknet Diaries, episodes 36 and 40.
I will add a link to that in the description. And also, if you have some favorite like privacy tools, I've started creating a list in the info section of all my videos of all my favorite products. So I've got like Faraday bags and data blockers and privacy screens and all kinds of things, because I want you all to be paranoid about this. No, I don't want you to be paranoid. I just want you to be taking easy precautions that could save you a lot of headaches. So if you guys have favorite tools, please let me know. I would love to know about them and learn about them and teach other people about them so that we can create a more security conscious culture. So on that note, let's move on to another hacking thing. I explained in a live video basically what's been going down at Binance and with this hacker who claims to have hacked the hackers who hacked Binance in May. If that makes sense, let me go over that more clearly. So I already gave like a rundown, but I'm going to summarize it even quicker in this video. Essentially, day before yesterday, we saw a data dump on this website that posted a bunch of what looked like KYC pics. And actually, before I do that, because it's going to play on my mind, I want to give a shout out to the people who gave super chats, because I really, really appreciate it. And I don't want to get too off topic in case it referred to things we talked about before. Anthony Monero, merci bien. He says, Roger Ver posted a message on his YouTube channel saying Bitcoin Cash was going to be added on Coinbase. I took captures at the time of this. If you wanted to tweet those at me, I would love to see that stuff. And he said another one that says the post was saying before Christmas. Interesting. So thank you so much for the super chat, Anthony. I really, really appreciate your support. And then I also got a super chat from Uvers, who said, thanks for giving Peter Schiff a lesson in manners, Naomi. Thank you, Uvers. I appreciate that. I think you're giving me far too much credit. I think that I was being a terrible interviewer, and nobody showed that interview to John Stossel, because he would disown me. He would be like, all the years you worked for me and this is how you interview people, I disown you. Like, it was horrendous. But honestly, so this is how it came about. So because I'm either getting tremendous love from people who are like, you sucked it to him, good on you, or I'm getting people who are like, you are so rude. I think it's a mixture of both, actually. So I just wanted to chat with him about the Pomp tweet. So we've been friends for a really long time, and I see him at conferences all the time. And I ran into him at Freedom Press. So I just said, let's do an interview. I want to talk about the Pomp tweet, because I called you a troll on Twitter, and I stand by that. And so he's like, yeah, cool, that sounds good. So we did this interview, and it was meant to just be talking about that and what he's done with this crypto, et cetera. And it was all going well. I was wrapping up the interview, as you can kind of see, about halfway through. And then he's like, and Bitcoin isn't money. You can't give me bait like that and not expect me to respond. So not expect me to respond. So just imagine that was a conversation that I would have had with Peter, like just the two of us behind the cameras, because that's what I wanted. But then I just kind of had the microphone going back and forth because it just happened to be on camera. And I'm like, well, maybe we'll use this. But I honestly just wanted to battle him about Bitcoin and try to convince him. And I can't help myself. And I do it every time I see him. And I should learn my lesson. So it was not my typical interview style, as you know. It was not good interview style, but I'm really pleased that you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it tremendously, and I wasn't going to post it because I was worried about what people would perceive as like, she's cutting him off, because I hate that. But then I actually thought it was quite funny, because he does the same thing to me all the time. So that's that story. So I appreciate your super chat, Uvers, and sorry for the digression. Let's get back to Binance. Data dump day before yesterday on a website. It was divulging all it was giving all this KYC data that had been collected, and they're saying that this was from Binance, that they hacked their servers there, and then you got a second dump, and it was on Telegram. There was a Telegram group that was set up, and again, it was people, you know, when you sign up to an exchange and they make you take that webcam picture, and you got to hold up a piece of paper that says the date and what exchange it's for, and you hold up your identity card, and you do all of that. So there were a bunch of pictures like that were leaked. Now, you immediately think, oh, Binance has been hacked. Now, the first thing that Binance responded was that this was actually to do with the hack in May, could have been. But then they came back and said that all of the images were from a specific date in February, and there was a third-party vendor that was actually handling their KYC information at the time. And so they're investigating that. But then they further came up and said that the images that were leaked actually don't match the images in their database. So they're thinking like maybe they were hoodwinked entirely. Coinbase apparently was talking with this presumable hacker for about a month. This person was calling themselves an altruistic white hat hacker. Oh, and saying like, oh, I just want to see justice. I want to see these people behind bars. I hacked the hackers, and this is the information I have access to. I also have their identities, and I will give it to you. And I also have been watching all of their price movements, and they've started to send money back and forth, and I can help you catch these hackers because I am a very good person. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. But then they're like, in exchange for me being a good person, you must give me 300 BTC for the privilege of getting this information, because all I want to see is them behind bars. And you got to stop and think, like, is that really the height of your altruism there? So negotiations apparently broke down. Binance was like, you're extorting us for information. This is not going to happen. We really do want to see this person behind bars. And then this guy or girl, whatever, apparently says, I did want to see them behind bars, but no more. I will now stand on the sidelines and just watch. And you're like, what? So Binance refused to pay the 300. They also said that because this person was giving this information to CoinDesk and giving it to the media, already people had been hurt by this hack, and so they weren't going to pay 300 BTC, but they might give them like a bug bounty or a hacker bounty or whatever to get information that would help find the perpetrators, or would lead to information about any of their weaknesses in their security system, because this apparently white hat hacker was saying that there was someone on the inside at Binance. They were harvesting API keys. He could help them find out the information and identity of this person. So Binance wanted that information, but this guy ended up just shutting down the conversation and was like, no, I don't want lesser money. I want to basically see this burn. So that's the story in a nutshell of what we know at the moment. And it's kind of this ongoing saga. And what I think is most interesting to come out of this is that CZ retweeted someone who was saying how shoddy the reporting at CoinDesk was. So I'm like, oh, because I kind of went to CoinDesk and I'm like, well, they've been talking with this person back and forth. But he was alleging, or this tweet was alleging, that Coinbase was just taking the word of this white hat hacker verbatim without fact checking or whatever. And so he retweeted this tweet saying like, I'm disappointed in CoinDesk, this is shoddy reporting, etc. I would love your opinion, Chris, on all of this. Like, I seem to get a pretty comprehensive view from the CoinDesk report, but I understand that some people are saying that they misrepresented facts. They seem to be saying more strongly than anything that it was Binance that was actually hacked, and Binance is not convinced that they actually were, that this data was actually taken from them. So do you have like any thoughts on this?
I don't have any inside info on it yet. I don't really have any details. I mean, Binance they're trying to claim that it's not them, but at the same time said they contracted out with somebody else, so it might be some of their related stuff. It's really hard to say. It's really still very much in progress. Hopefully we'll have some more news over the weekend or next week, and some official statement from Binance on this, because if there really are 60,000 people's, faces and driver's license information and all that out there, that's kind of not a good thing. That seems like something that should definitely be addressed positively one way or another. Binance is claiming that they aren't theirs, but it's one of those things that you can't really tell yet. So I'm hoping to have more info. It sucks that our government's requirements for AML KYC stuff has ended up resulting in our data just being everywhere. Your social security number is supposed to be the most special thing you could have that you couldn't give out, and now everybody has it because Equifax and Capital One and all them all had millions compromised over the last couple of weeks, and now your driver's license and your face is everywhere thanks to Binance. It really sucks that in this day and age of having to identify yourself everywhere, now everybody can just steal your identity. I mean, really, the best thing we can all do is just get horrible credits so nobody will want to bother stealing our identities. Don't do that, please.
That's a great solution. It's so good that we've been forced into choosing the lesser of two evils. But that's a great point, Chris, and that's probably what I wanted to wrap up on this topic is KYC and how awful it is and how the government is mandating this. Like, a lot of people are getting angry at Binance for not securing this data. The government is literally forcing a system that requires these companies to collect this data, whether they want to or not, whether they think that they have sufficient security to protect it or not. None of these third parties seem to have sufficient security. JP Morgan, you would presume with all of their resources and the direct line of credit they have to the Fed, that they would have ample resources to have great security. They're hacked every other week. You have all these banks that are hacked and this information is passed around, people get hurt through identity theft. And the issue is that KYC really hurts people. We have to think about, like, what is the trade-off here? Everyone only ever talks about, well, KYC, because, you know, we need to know what's going on. We need to protect you from money launderers. We need to protect you from because terrorism. And everyone's like, oh, terrorism's bad. That's a great point. And they don't think about the trade-offs. There are always unintended consequences of any policy that is created. The consequences of this is that you create this treasure trove of information that is a giant target sign for hackers. And they all the time systematically go after this treasure trove. They get information, they extort people, they sell the information on the black market. It's just disastrous. And what was great about Bitcoin and what made people so excited at the start was that you had a system that would allow you to send to someone you didn't know and trust that that transaction could take place without having to verify identities on both sides, because that's how a lot of the security in banks work. They verify the identity of different people. They know that they can trust that transaction. And so they're able to facilitate these transactions. Bitcoin decentralized trust and allowed people to make transactions without this information. So it would have been fantastic for individual security and protecting the individual against things like identity theft. And yet now the government is shoehorning crypto back into this old, outdated model under the guise of terrorism and protecting us against money laundering, which I think is rubbish. I think it's all just about control. And they just want to be able to control purchases the same way that they froze transactions to WikiLeaks, the same way that they shut down bank accounts to people involved in medical marijuana or other industries that aren't illegal, but they don't necessarily want to support. And so it's just this mechanism for control that I just think is outdated and we need to fight against. You're muted again, Chris. You're always muted. There we go.
I'm trying not to click over everybody as I look through stuff, but apparently it thought I was talking anyway.
It did. So that's all I wanted to really say about the KYC thing. Just be aware, like if you are a proponent of KYC, just be aware of some of the consequences of it. And I'm wondering whether we can think of better systems for this. I know we're always talking about identity on the blockchain and how this is going to be the savior. We haven't really seen that yet. Chris, do you have any predictions on what's going to happen in that realm of things?
Well, the government's going to want more and more control, and I think we might even talk about something related to that a little bit later as well. But it's going to be hard because I'm a big proponent of privacy and privacy coins. That's why, you know, I'm working with Bitcoin Confidential. I want people to have the ability to privately transact with each other. I think the whole AML KYC stuff would really stop being an issue if the government stopped overstepping its grounds and making everything illegal. You know, money laundering wouldn't be a problem if we didn't make drugs illegal, if we didn't make all this other stuff illegal that necessitated the money laundering to not go to prison. And if we just rolled back all of that overregulation, we'd roll back all the power that this money has in government, and then things would probably be a little bit better as far as this goes. And it wouldn't be anybody's business if I paid you for something or not. And that's really what this is about, is if I'm paying you money, there's no reason I should have to prove who I am to anyone except you. I mean, since you're giving me something and I'm giving you something, that should just be between us. And that was the dream of Bitcoin. And I hope that crypto will still continue to deliver that dream. But governments worldwide really don't like giving up that control, because they like the ability to manage their citizens and make sure that they have the ability to lock up any of their citizens at any point, should they so desire it.
Yeah, it's a bad system that we definitely needs to be improved. We're on the right path. There are smart people who are looking into this and working on developing technology that deals with this. I hope that they succeed sooner rather than later, because I don't believe that the current system is working. And let's talk about another part of the current system that is not working. Let's go to this Danish bank in Denmark that is apparently offering mortgages at a negative 0.5% interest rate, which means that they're paying people to borrow money. Let's talk about that a little bit, because you think about how crashes happen in the economy, and they happen because there's a bunch of malinvestments, augmentations in the market due to easy money, and all this malinvestment. Eventually, there's a correction in the market, and things come crashing down. And it's government easy money policies that generally creates all of this, malinvestment. And so now you're actually paying people to take out loans and paying people to take out mortgages. Oh my God, like every flag in my head is waving. Every red flag is waving, saying like, this is a terrible idea. Now, I presume that in Denmark, they are, the government is subsidizing these heavily. And that is how they're able to do this, because they probably want to stimulate the economy. So all this Keynesian nonsense that you hear about, that, we'll get money moving and that'll be great to stimulate the economy. And what ends up happening is people just start using this easy money and buying things that they can't afford, or it's bad investment, and it just creates terrible scenarios. So Chris, I'm going to hand over to you. Let's discuss this a little bit, because I think interest rates affect the crypto space a whole lot. And I think that we've talked about this before. Now, I mean, Bitcoin really was invented, we see, as a reaction to the existing financial system. And this is the type of stuff that's going on in the existing financial system. We have negative interest rates. No one will want to hold a money, that is costing them money to put in a bank account. They're just not going to want to keep their money in that form of money. So they're probably going to be looking to alternative currencies like crypto, which actually is a deflationary rather than inflationary currency. It's like this big complex system where Bitcoin now plays a role, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But Chris, please give us your thoughts on all of this.
Well, it's interesting in Denmark right now. The last I checked, Denmark's actual interest rate, their interbank rate, was like negative 0.42%. And their overall interest rate was negative 0.65%. So it's kind of an interesting thought, because by lending out this money at negative 0.5%, they're actually gaining on if they just held on to this money. So from the bank's perspective, it's still a win for them, not to mention any of the fees and whatnot they're going to get on top for issuing the mortgage that probably would overtake this negative 0.5% over at least the short term. But that being said, I'm not an expert on interest rates right now, and I really need to do some more reading up on this, because to me, my response to negative interest rate is just like insanity. Why would anybody do this? On the flip side of this could mean that if you deposit your money with a bank, you're going to lose money every year.
Not just through inflation, but because you're going to be paying them. Like, remember those good old days? It wasn't too long ago when you would put money in a bank account and you would get an interest rate. Do you remember that? It may be too far back for some of you young'uns out there. I have vague recollections of looking at different interest rates and saying, oh, maybe I'll create a term deposit. Oh, maybe I'll put this in a savings account instead of a checking account, because then I can get, 4% interest or something. I actually remember those figures. And now we're talking about a situation where not only do you not earn interest on your money, not only is it not just like net, nothing is happening because it's just a 2% interest and you're losing 2% to inflation. Not only is it you're only losing 2% to inflation because there's no interest rate on your account, but you're actually going to be paying extra money on top of losing it through inflation. I mean, it's just this crazy situation that really is sort of what you would suspect would lead to runaway inflation.
Well, there's a whole bunch of different things here that you have to think about too, because, for example, for you and me, if we were to deposit money in a bank and lose money, why would we do that? We would buy cryptocurrency. We would keep stuff in cash.
Absolutely.
But there have been talks about ways government could say, well, you had $5,000 in your bank account and you withdrew 4 of it, well, we're still going to charge you negative rates on those 4 you withdrew, unless you prove that you spent it or whatever. So, you could see things like that happening. You could see, right now, German bonds, people are literally paying a negative yield to Germany of 0.88% to buy a German government bond. Like, why would they do that? Well, if you think about it, what does that say for people's confidence in the euro itself, where they would rather have the German government owe them money than they would want to hold euros? So to them, that means they're trying, think about it as if the Eurozone falls apart, then Germany's going to go back to their national currency, and maybe be better for you to have an IOU from the Germany in their national currency than to hold on to your euros. So there's a whole bunch of big picture things here too about what people think are going to happen in the future because of this. And to me, it's absolutely insane. It shows a completely broken and sick system. There's at no point when money now is worth less to you than money 10 years from now. That's not how money works. That's not how money has ever worked. And yet our system is so broken right now that people are buying into that and think it's, oh no, this isn't crazy. This is absolutely normal. This is the meme. The room is on fire and people are saying everything's fine. I don't get it at all that people aren't freaking out here, but that's kind of how they want it. They want people to remain calm. Everybody on NPR and Marketplace and Bloomberg is this is just normal. We're good. Why is everybody worried here? And then, of course, the other concept here is that even by their own terms, they're completely unprepared should there be another recession, because the average amount that a central bank has had to drop during recessions is 5%, and no major country has 5% before they go negative. We're already negative in these areas, and if we do get a recession, there's no room for them to play without going seriously negative, which I can't imagine would help. Of course, if you think about it, a lot of these people, even like Bernie Sanders, economic advisors, they think that all that matters is money. Like, you can never run out of money because you can always produce more. And there's no concept that, the money's not what's important. It's like the food you can buy with it that is important. And there's a limited amount of that. There's a limited amount of all of this stuff that money is supposed to represent. And eventually that bill is going to come to pay. And what are we going to do about it other than we're going to have to live well beneath our means for many, many years to pay back all of us living above our means for all these years in the past? And Schiff, for all we make fun of him, has very good points on this topic in various of his podcasts and his books in the past. So it's worth reading up what people have said about this in the past, because there have been smart people who have been saying this has been coming for years.
Yeah.
But everybody else is just saying, well, you've been saying this has been coming for years now, and we've lost all this money because we didn't invest because of you. You're just wrong. And it's like, well, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay liquid. That doesn't mean it's not irrational.
Yeah. And it's like, so this is an ongoing issue that's going to happen. And someone was mentioning like, don't get political. And it's hard to talk about political Bitcoin and not get political. But the essence comes down to whether you agree with all this stuff or not. The essence comes down to, are you going to hold your money in a bank at the end of the day that is costing you a huge amount of money to put it there? Or are you going to hold it in something that is not costing you any money to hold it in? So it's just going to be up to the individuals to make those choices. And honestly, when it comes to like the inflation issue, if you have a money that over the last 100 years has lost 98% of its value, people would be stupid to hold that money for another 100 years, especially now that we have a choice. Before we didn't have a choice. The government could shut down competing currencies as it wants. But now we do have a choice. So I think we're just going to have to see what plays out during this. Like, now that consumers have choices, where are they voting to put their money? And that's just something we're going to have to watch.
It absolutely is. And it's going to be quite interesting to watch as we continue going on here. Even just this last week, with all the chaos that's been happening this last week, you'd have, gold and silver making 6-year highs. You have the Dow and the S&P dropping beneath their 20 and 50-day moving averages up against their 200-day moving averages. You have a whole bunch of stuff happening that's screaming from the rooftops that stuff is getting weird. And volatility is back in the major markets. I don't know. It's happened before. We don't know if this is going to be the big drop or not, but there's not much more room for them to play. They're already dropping interest rates.
Yeah, they're cutting interest rates, and it's craziness. It's craziness, Chris. What are we going to do? Oh, we have crypto. So it makes me feel a little better.
Yep.
Not investment advice, just so you know. Anthony Monero, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, captures are sent. So if you guys wanted to go to my Twitter, I presume that he tweeted them at me and you guys can check those out, the captures that he mentioned. Thank you so much for the super chat. And Lucia, thank you. Sent a super chat and said, keep up the great work. Thank you. Lucia, for your great work. You're always such a pleasure to see around Telegram and not so much the public Telegram group anymore, and Twitter and all of that. So thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And we've got some infighting in the group, so I'm just going to keep kind of watching that as we continue the show. Maybe I'll get cook some popcorn and sit there and be like, oh, Kieran and Ryan, they're going at it again. So you guys, you do what you need to do and get that fight sorted. We're all enjoying watching it. So I'm going to move to this new global cryptocurrency system that has been set up. And there are about 15 governments that are involved in this. The plan is that they want to share users' personal data. And it's, again, they're talking about money laundering being the root of all of this. They don't want money laundering, so they don't want to see it in cryptocurrency. They're establishing this organization that is going to be sharing information, making it easier for people to track financial data in crypto. And for me, that just screams like, oh gosh, this global superpower collecting all of our data. That just doesn't seem like a good trajectory. Do you have a conflicting opinion, Chris? Where do you stand on this?
No, the goal is to prevent funds from being laundered, going to terrorist organizations, or otherwise being put to illicit use. And we all know if they can prevent it from going to terrorists, they can prevent it from going to you too. And that's kind of the whole point here, is control. So it sounds like they're trying to create a system here to track cryptocurrency transactions and then share that data between countries, because, Lord knows it would suck if some other country didn't have that information on you.
Lord knows it would suck if you had financial privacy. People haven't had that for 40 years. It would collapse society if we would go back to that. Terrible.
You haven't done anything wrong. You have nothing to fear, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We all know that everybody who works for these government systems is completely honest, will never look up information to anybody that doesn't commit a crime, is convicted of a crime, and will never use private information against private citizens in any way if they go against the government.
Yeah. So as we said before, oh, sorry, Chris.
No, as I say completely and utterly sarcastically, because there's literally thousands of examples of the government doing that. And not only that, there are thousands of examples of the governments being so inept with this data anyway that it would make the Binance hack look like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now you've got this Financial Action Task Force. It has 30 member countries and economies. They're going to be drawing up measures by 2020. And a lot of countries in the world, they don't yet have federal regulation that is concrete and cohesive and understandable around cryptocurrency. So people are saying that the establishment of this worldwide organization might speed that sort of thing up. And that's another thing that I don't want to see. I don't want to see some global conglomerate deciding how everyone in the world is going to be treating crypto. That seems very Orwellian and dangerous to me. So I like that there are currently different regimes all over the world and different places treating it better than others. That's why a lot of companies are moving to Bermuda. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. You had Abra that closed down some of its services in in America. You had Circle that moved a lot of their stuff offshore to Bermuda because they're better jurisdictions for crypto. So if we were to start to see global cohesive regulation, and everyone had to abide by that, that's kind of scary to me. So we're going to have to look at what happens with this group. It also seems very bureaucratic, so I'm not sure that they'll come up with anything too quickly. But we're just going to have to follow this and see what they come up with. I don't know if they're accepting comments at the moment. It doesn't seem like they are, but I would be very interested in whether people in the crypto community are reaching out to them and trying to advise them on what would be good for innovation, what would stimulate innovation, and what would hurt the economy. I'm not sure if they're interested in that, but it would be nice to see some pushback there or some involvement in people who are actually in the crypto space. Have you seen anything about that, Chris?
Oh, I mean, we do have some of like the United States government people in the Senate and whatnot talking about how the U.S. can't be left behind when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain innovation. But for the most part, they're all just terrified about losing control, and they're really not worried about what's best for us. They're more worried about what'll hurt their chances of staying in power. So I'm hopeful that more and more countries will go the way of a few of those smaller freedom-oriented countries in Europe around the world, but all the big ones seem to just have more concern about the loss of control that cryptocurrency means instead of the chance for human flourishing that it offers.
Yeah, indeed. I want to move along because we are running out of time here. I wanted to mention, talking about government involvement, a really good crypto bill, from what I can see, that is being reintroduced in North Carolina. So there's a congressman there who previously introduced a bill, and now they're reintroducing it. So Ted Budd, this was reintroduced on July 25th. And he calls this, he basically wants to look at the Internal Revenue Code. He wants to create what he calls the Virtual Value Tax Fix Act. So the idea is that before, under 1986 code, gains and losses in transactions of real property remained unrecognized with the IRS. And so they want to get back to something like that and stop this double taxing of goods that happens when you have like capital gains and all of that kind of stuff. So he wants to reintroduce this, and it also, including a part of it, there's like a safe harbor for taxpayers with forked assets. So there are all kinds of things that legislators don't even know how to touch right now. And it seems like this guy has a pretty good grasp on crypto, as far as I can tell. And it really is this tax complication where, you know, you have Bitcoin and then suddenly you have two assets, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, whether you wanted both of them or not. And then if one of them goes up in value, but maybe you just never retrieved those coins, or maybe, you know, you tried to split the coins, but the split didn't work. And so you lose one of them. So like all this kind of stuff can happen. And there's nothing that really deals with that at the moment. So he is trying to get some of that passed that would make it better for crypto users. And he basically said, I like his quote, like, you can't kill Bitcoin. That's what he said. So I mean, what have you looked into this, Chris? It seems pretty promising.
I haven't had a chance to read through the bill itself. I'm hopeful. You know, talking about removing the record-keeping requirements and the double taxation whenever making purchases with cryptocurrency. So that's a huge benefit in my mind, because it's horribly cumbersome. I mean, at this point, you have to calculate profit and loss if you buy a coffee with smart cash. I mean, that's just how it is for everybody. If you use any of your crypto anywhere to buy anything, it's a profit loss thing. You have to track your cost basis and all this jazz that, frankly, I didn't even know were terms before I started dealing with cryptocurrency. So it's horrible for the average person. And I'm very hopeful that this bill will actually do that. Me being who I am, I'm very doubtful that any bill that actually passes will do anything like it says. And
Did you just say me being who I am?
Yes.
At least you understand yourself well. Me being who I am, I have serious mistrust of government and doubtful anything good will ever come from it. At least you're very honest there, Chris.
I basically assume that any bill passed will do the opposite of what it says it's supposed to do. But that's just, you know, history and all. You know, could be wrong. This might be the first time. So I'm hopeful. It would be nice to have it not so hard to deal with this, because it affects businesses accepting it, because then they have to deal with all this. It affects people wanting to use it. And if this actually did open up, this would be a huge boon to the usability of cryptocurrency in America, and hopefully set a great example for it worldwide. But we will see. I mean, remember that it was just a couple of weeks ago that the IRS started sending out a bunch of letters to taxpayers who they thought owed them a bunch of money for cryptocurrency usage. They said they were sending out letters to something like 10,000 people. on July 26th, saying that they haven't filed taxes appropriately and they owe them a bunch of money from bad cryptocurrency stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know personally anybody who received one of these letters, but you can find people who claim to have on Reddit and whatnot. So, you got to cover yourself. You got to do what you can do. And it sucks having to deal with the mob of the US government, but that is what it is.
Absolutely. So we are running out of time here. So just two things that I wanted to just mention as we wrap up here. So Litecoin halvening happens. A lot of people, there was a big kind of run up beforehand, and people were really buying into Litecoin in anticipation of this happening. And looking at like the how Litecoin has done over the last week, it's not looked too good for it. Do you have any, I mean, when people talk about the economics of the halvenings, Chris, what are your thoughts on all of that?
When things are scheduled like halvenings, they are almost certainly priced in before they happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I don't think this was surprising. I don't think there's anything like that, but I do think it did affect the price leading up to it, because that's how things get priced in. And I think that a slower emission rate should be good for the economics of Litecoin moving forward. But, nobody should have been surprised that it was a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of thing, like everything else in crypto, because it's all open source. There's very few surprises and things like this. And people usually over anticipate what's going to happen. And it almost is always a, sell right before it happens kind of thing.
Absolutely. I got a super chat from Anthony Monero. Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate your support. He says, on the French news, the journalists have started to talk about people who are buying BTC like gold as a secure investment. And he has sent me the link to that. That is interesting that they're starting to phrase it that way. It wasn't, currently you still look at the media and they talk about how it's not a secure investment at all. It's volatile and it would be a terrible store of value and you shouldn't trust it and all of that stuff. And this has been the narrative for a long time. So it's fascinating to see journalists who are now like, people have decided to buy crypto as well as gold, putting them in the same league as if this is going to be the new wave of people securing their finances. And that could be in relation to what we're talking about before, about negative interest rates, about impending crashes that we may see coming, about constant inflation that's happening, and, constant quantitative easing that's occurring. So all of these things may be leading people to look into crypto a little more closely than they had before.
I expect so, because every major currency right now is racing to see who can devaluate further, because China and the US are doing it and everybody else can't get left behind. Otherwise their exports might get hurt or whatever. So yeah, sure. Anything is better than when that the yuan and the dollar are in a devaluation race right now, and the euro is on the side trying to take advantage of that, though they have gone up against the US dollar recently because they're not doing it as fast as we are. Who knew? So it is completely unsurprising that people are looking into things like Bitcoin and crypto lately, because nobody can manipulate Bitcoin in the way they're manipulating the US dollar, the yuan, or the euro right now.
Absolutely. And so the final thing that I want to talk about is just talking about like the price movements. And Chris, I'm going to hand over to you to talk about that. There was an article recently that was talking about how a no deal with Brexit will see cryptocurrencies value hit a record high. Basically, they're looking at how the pound has been going down and crypto has been going up. They're thinking that those things are related and it's only going to get worse. I'm dubious about that claim, but it is an interesting theory. What are your thoughts?
Well, it was interesting in that I read about this on The Independent, which is, it's not like I'm reading this on CoinDesk or something. So it's a mainstream, more or less, media bit that's talking about this. And the reality of it is, people are expecting that the pound would fall if they got into a no-deal Brexit. So it's entirely possible that Bitcoin could see a high versus the British pound. That being said, I don't see the British pound affecting the global economy quite that much to make Bitcoin really take off worldwide to new highs just because of that. And and if you listen to the Brexit people, the pound won't drop that much anyway. So who knows? It's all sorts of crazy at this point. But Bitcoin itself is showing a lot of strength, and you have plenty of people saying that it'll fall back down to 3,000, retest its lows, which it could very well do. I don't necessarily see how it would do that based on what I'm seeing in the traditional markets right now. I think we're pretty far along into that whole global recession thing that I think is relatively inevitable, but I'm horrible with timing. I'm a tech guy, not a trader. If I could time all these things perfectly, I'd be a lot wealthier right now.
It's very hard to time the market, whether you know what the trajectory is or not.
Yes.
So I want to also say that Anthony Monaco just sent through another super chat, and I am loving these super chats. Anthony, you are like the star supporter of this show today, and I really appreciate this. And he says, did you see the Kevin O'Leary video from 4th the 11th, 2013 on CBC? You're going to love it. No, I did not see that. He's the guy from Shark Tank, right? So I will have to check that out, but let us know what he said in that, and maybe I will do a reaction video or something if you think I love it that much. So, I mean, that's really all the time we have today. Chris, do you have any passing words? I hate to cut you off on the Brexit thing before. We're just sort of running out of time here, but parting wisdom for everyone.
Be careful with your money. Keep an eye on what's happening. And the crash will not come where everybody is looking. It's going to come from somewhere off to the side, somewhere this way. It always has happened in the past, though a lot of people would argue about that with the housing crisis. But still, if you listen to everybody on the mainstream media, everything was fine up until everything was burning down around us in 2007. So
everything was fine until everything was burning down. It literally was. And that's how Peter Schiff really came to fame, just being on every news show that he was only invited on so people could ridicule him, because he was saying, listen, there's going to be a housing crash. There's going to be a housing crash. And everyone was like, ha, you're adorable. Yeah. Housing crash. And Bernanke is like, there's no housing crash. Well, no, Bernanke was not in there. It was Greenspan was saying, no, everything looks great. Everything looks fine. And so... yeah, I agree. We're not really gonna know when it's gonna happen until it happens. But just make sure that you stay safe, people. And on that note, I'm going to bid you all a wonderful weekend. Please go and have lots of fun. Look after yourselves. Take care and maybe do some spring cleaning of your crypto accounts. Check your security. Spend an afternoon going through, making sure you have two-factor on everything, making sure that you have privacy screens on your phone, making sure that you have lots of things that may save you from headaches in the future. If any of you guys have tips for things that you think other people should be doing, please let me know. I would love to share it with everyone. But go and have a wonderful weekend. All of you. Chris, go and have a wonderful weekend. Are you doing anything fun this weekend?
I am preparing to travel next week, so making sure my wife and kids are all settled for me not being there.
Absolutely.
Swimming with all my girls because it's like really nice weather up here, so it should be a really beautiful weekend for all of that.
Well, I'm traveling all the time, so you will get updates on my Telegram from all of the wonderful places that I am always in. But I think that I may be seeing karaoke this weekend, which is always lots of fun. So if you guys are doing fun things, let me know what they are. Huge thank you to the people who sent Power Chat. And I totally forgot at the start of the show, so I will let you know now, and maybe I'll mention it in the next one. I have people who send me Minds tokens, and I added this thing that says I'll give you a shout out if you send me a Minds token. The Minds tokens are basically helpful for helping you like boost your views on the Minds platform itself, so that it helps you get more visibility for your articles. So I've had some wires from people over this week, so let me just read those out and give a shout out to the people who sent them. God damn it, where are the people who sent them? I can't find them. I don't know where. There's no list. There's no list that says. I think I have to go back through notifications. All right. Well, I know that Zeroth Position is one of them. He has a blog. He writes about like lots of controversial libertarian topics. So if you wanted to check that out, head over to his Mind page and you can have a look. But I had other people who sent me Minds tokens too. I'll make a list. I'll prepare in advance next time. It's going to be great. And let you know and give you guys a shout out. But long story short, I just really appreciate your support on all of the platforms, whether it's like memo.cash or Minds or Float or any of these things, or here on YouTube. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to everyone who's here on the chat. I love you guys. I'll see you next live stream or on my other videos. Go forth, be merry, have fun and enjoyment in all your things.
Sayonara.
Sayonara. Bye.
Dump the banks, long Bitcoin. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.